Are you ready? I'm ready too. Hi kids, this is Professor Agar up at North Hennepin Community College. And today, because I've gotten so many emails on the seriousness of my previous lectures, even one person said they were kind of grim. So I decided to lighten up a little bit. And let's have a lecture that's kind of a novelty that I bet you've never done before and you might want to consider. I call it stand development. And the theory of this is with a very dilute developer. You let your film stand for 1 hour without too much agitation. Now that's novel and it turns out surprisingly well, and I think you're going to enjoy it if you do decide to try it. But it also leads me into talking more specifically about different developers, which I haven't done previously. So far all I've told you is you should develop normally, and then you can underdevelop, you can overdevelop, and I didn't say which developer, but this time I'm going to show you a specific developer. Actually, I'll show you two. But we'll start off with an age-old developer. It's probably the oldest commercial developer that came about in the 1890s, a guy named Anderson, and he found the formula for Rodinal. And here's a little bottle of Rodinal that you can get through Freestyle Photo.biz out in California, or B&H in New York, and there's probably some other places, and I do not get paid for this advertisement. So Rodinal, very old, is a thick, syrupy liquid, highly concentrated, and you just use a little teeny tiny bit to develop normally, like 1 to 25, or 1 to 50, or 1 to 100. So we are actually going to dilute this Rodinal 1 to 100, and so I have a little chart here that I'll show you. Stand development, Rodinal 1 to 100, and it's a small amount, only 10 cc's or 10 milliliters into 1,000 millimeters of H2O. Now 10 cc's or 10 milliliters is less than an ounce, and so as Americans we're used to ounces and pounds and gallons and things like that. So the equivalent of this would be 10 ounces to 1,000 ounces, which is almost a gallon. In terms of American standards, that'd be too much volume. We just want to develop, say, one roll of film, and we'd be developing our roll of film in a double tank so that there's enough volume. So really what we're going to do is use cc's. Now Americans aren't used to cc's, Europeans are, the rest of the world is. So what I did is I went to the pharmacy, the drugstore, Walmart, whatever it's called in your neighborhood. And I went to an area where you might have these stuff for little babies and medicine. You can also ask the pharmacist. It's a little cc container. You pour the solution in here and it measures. Let me get my glasses on these. I got my glasses here. Don't go away. These are my real glasses. Here's 5 cc's. That's from here, this small amount here, and then we have another 5, a total of 10 cc's. So it's perfect for this Rodinal development where you're going to take 10 cc's and you're going to put it into a quart or a liter, 1,000 millimeters of H2O. So here's 1,000 cc's of water container, and then you're going to pour this Rodinal into this little tube, and then you're going to mix it, stir it just slightly, and then you're ready to develop. So I filled up my container, 1 liter or 1 quart container, 1,000 cc's with water, and now I'm ready to pour in my Rodinal. Now this Rodinal, very syrupy, and it's got a little teeny tiny little, I don't know if you can see that, it's a little tiny squeeze, little tiny hole there, and you just kind of squeeze it out because they assume that you're going to use it as a one-shot solution. So it's a one-shot solution. You just mix up a small amount of this into water, develop your film. Now, I said it was age-old, this Rodinal developer, over 130 some years. And it was a favorite amongst photographers in the 20s and 30s, 40s, and 50s, and it still is. One of the great photographers who I always admired was the son of Edward Weston, that was Brett Weston, and he liked Rodinal because Rodinal was highly concentrated, fast acting, it's a commercial grade, very sharp, gives you very sharp, and lots of nice contrast around all of the grain so that your pictures look very sharp. So Rodinal is good for slow film like ASA 50, ASA 100, maybe 200. For your other films like 400, ASA 400, it's a little, maybe a little too grainy, unless you like grain. Anyway, so here we go now. So I've got the Rodinal, and I'm going to pour this guy in, trying to do it so you can kind of see. I'll pour it in like this, and we're going to do 10 cc's. Pouring that in like so. I'm doing this upside down, and a little bit up over my hand. There we go. Oh, a little bit more. There we go, making a mess here. It's a hair too much, but that's okay. And then we're going to just pour this right in like so. And then I can just kind of stir it like this. Drip, drip, as I often tell my students as they go between baths with their tongs. And now this is ready for us to pour in and develop our film for 1 hour. Now when you pour in your developer, you want to slowly invert your tank for about 30 seconds. Normally I would say you should agitate, and I have discovered that students often take me quite seriously when I say agitate. And so when they agitate, they go like this. Like they're mixing a martini or something, you know? That's not what we're going to do. We're going to pour it in, put the lid on, and start the clock. And then we're going to invert the tank like this. Just like you're doing Tai Chi. Like this. 30 seconds. End of the 30 seconds. You put it down. Sometimes people will kind of go like that in case there's any air bubbles that cling to the surface of the film. If they cling to the surface of the film, the development cannot take place, and then you get a little black mark on your film. So the clock has started. 30 minutes is a long time. I think we've had this discussion before when I discussed night photography. What can you do in 30 seconds? What can you do in a minute? Well, now what can you do in 30 minutes? Well, there's a lot you can do. I usually run upstairs in the dark room, which is always in the basement. I do a few dishes, pet the dog, maybe pick up the phone, call somebody, start a pot of coffee. I'm looking at my little wristwatch with the clock up there. Plus I got a timer in the basement that has a buzzer. So if I hear that buzzer, because I'm too involved with something, I'll hang up the phone or dash back downstairs. And now, 30 minutes later, tank's been sitting there. We're going to slowly invert the tank, not agitate. Slowly. Once, maybe twice. You want to go for the big cojones. Here's a third time. Slowly. There we go. And then you can go like that. Another half hour. And you can put this wet laundry into the dryer. Put new fresh laundry into the washer. Start that, start that, start that. Oh, kitties, they need to be fed. I take care of them. So on and so forth. Oh, hey, there's my guitar sitting in the end of the office there, so I think I'll just pick that up, play a song or two or three. Oh, then I hear the buzzer. Half hour has already passed by. And so now I come back, and now we do the normal and standard procedure of dumping out the developer, going into the stop, going into the fix, going into at least a 5-minute wash. I usually go 10 minutes, and then photo flow, and then hang to dry. So let's look at a roll of film that I just did using a Tri-X film and Rodinal with a stand development. So we processed our stand development film and it turned out very nice. I put it in this dryer. Of course, you can just do it air dry. That's what I do at my home. But here at North Hennepin, we have a lot of classes, and they only are here for 2.5 hours, twice a week, so they have to get a lot done in a small amount of time. So we have this nice film dryer that dries the film in about 20 minutes or so. So here we go. We'll open this up, and here's our film. Nicely processed, nicely dry. Of course, when the film's dry, you always handle the film on the edges. And now let's just take a look at this and just see kind of what it looks like. I can see some nice density, really nice density here, and so these just all very even. they look quite nice. So I'm excited to make proofs of these and to show you some print samples. So when I first started experimenting with this, and actually we did it about 2 months earlier, I went out in the backyard, and it was a lovely day and nice sun. I liked the fact there was a lot of contrast because I wanted to see about the contrast. And I tested the film at different ASAs. So this was T-Max 100, so I tested at 150 and 200 and 400, just see what it would look like. So the negatives have a kind of a checkerboard look here. And these negatives in here look about the best, and then here's some little fence things that also were, at ASA 100. So basically, I discovered from this experiment that the ASA of your film usually works pretty well. So it's certainly a good starting point. And then I made a proof sheet, which is right here. So here's a lovely little proof sheet, and then I made a print of this is photograph of my mother's broom. My mother grew up in the Dust Bowl out in North Dakota, and they never threw anything away. So I found this this broom on her front porch, and there was absolutely there wasn't any broom left. It was just a kind of a little stub. And I said, "Mom, let's get you a new broom." And she said, "Oh, this still has some life in it." And so I stole it from her, and I got her another broom. So I selected one of these and made a print. Let's just see what that looks like. And here's I made 2 prints actually. Well, I made 3 prints. Let's take a look at these. I made 3 prints. So here's, and I'll make scans of these, but this one here, just a little dark. And here's my mom's broom here. And then I made one just a little bit lighter. And that's probably a better one. I think I like that. And then I think I added a little more contrast on this, which I've previously discussed, maybe about a grade 2.5. So I think that one turned out pretty good. Then I also made a little image here of my doorknob, because I like doorknobs. And so I made a print of that. Oh, I guess I didn't get the doorknob in, but I got a hook, which is just as good. And to me, it has a nice quality to it. It's sharp. I don't see, well, of course, it's ASA 100 film, so it doesn't have a lot of grain. The nice thing about this standalone development and Rodinal is you don't have to worry too much about temperature. You want to keep it around 68. You can actually be a little shy of an hour or a little more than an hour. And you can develop all films in it. And 35 is great, works great for 35 millimeter and a 2 1/4. Now, so far we've just been talking about Rodinal. And you might have trouble getting Rodinal. And there's another developer which I like a lot, and that's called HC-110, and let me show you that bottle. So here's a bottle of Kodak's HC-110, which has been around for many years. Kodak doesn't make it anymore, other people make it, but you can still get it through Freestyle, Photo.biz, and B&H, Photo in New York, neither of which pay me for this advertisement, but that's okay. Now, the reason I like HC-110 is because I've been using it for years in my personal work, and Ansel Adams used it. So 2 photographers, Brett Weston loved Rodinal, and HC-110 loved by Ansel Adams. Both very similar photographers, but different styles. So the next thing I'll show you is using HC-110 for stand development and some print samples. Here is another developer. I use this developer a lot in my own work because I use 4x5 film, and this developer is like Rodinal. It's old. It's made by Kodak, not Agfa, and Kodak doesn't make it anymore, but you can still get it through another manufacturer. It's called HC-110. It's an old developer from the beginning of the 20th century. It's very thick and syrupy. This is even more syrupy and concentrated than Rodinal. They're all good developers. So to make my stand development, I'm going to use this ratio. I will use 5 cc's of HC-110, which is a small amount, to 1,000 cc's or 32 ounces or 1 liter or a quart of water. Here I've got lovely stainless steel quart of water right here. And now to mix, so I'll open up the top here. I've used this a couple times. And I'm going to start pouring it in slowly. It's kind of a syrupy thing. And every now and then I'll just kind of stop and let it. It takes a while for it to kind of build up and run down. Kind of, ooh, there we go. Oh boy. There it is. Hey, that's close enough. So there we go. 5 cc's of HC-110 concentrate. And now I'm going to put it here in 1,000 cc's of H2. I'll just pour it in like this and let it go for a while. It's going to drip out for a while. Because again, it's like this syrup, this magic elixir. And then I'm going to get a little water in there. You want to try and get out as much of that HC-110 as you can. And then you want to stir it because, again, it's kind of thick. The Rodinal, when I put it in, mixed in a lot easier. And keep stirring it until you have a uniform color of kind of, reminds me of a very, very weak lemonade. Yeah, where the ice cubes have all melted. And now that's it. I'm ready to go. I'm going to pour it into my tank with 1 roll of film. But my tank is a double roll. Okay, so that's why I got 32 ounces. I'm going to agitate for 30 seconds very gently. Recall how I did that. Just kind of like this, very gently. And then I'll put it down. My development time is going to be a little different with HC-110. I'm going to develop at 45 minutes. You can experiment if your negatives are a little weak. You could always go an hour, like I did with the Rodinal, but 45 minutes worked well for me. I also did another agitation halfway through at 20 minutes. So remember, you're going to agitate for the first 30 seconds, and then let it sit, walk away, come back in 20 minutes. Agitate very slowly, once, twice, put it down, and then 45 minutes later, pour everything out, stop, and fix as usual. So my negatives turned out pretty well, I thought. And here's an example of my proof sheet. And I selected an image from my backyard where I was photographing the morning glories, and the light was, it was backlit. I thought it looked nice. And when I made the print, I was thinking it has a nice buoyant feel to it. There's good light and darkness, so I was very pleased with the results. So I'll try this again, work on this, and hopefully you'll find this beneficial in your development experiments. Well, kids, you know, I've often brought this subject up when you have long exposures, like at night. What are you supposed to do? Or how about in this case where we're developing my film here? I mean, how long, what should you do in between time? So I thought Laura and I might just have a little drink. We happen to have a little leftover HC-110. We just thought, and you know, it does look like a very weak lemonade. So I thought Laura might want to sample some here. And I'll have a little bit here, like this. And there you go. Well, thanks for helping out on this video. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah. To your health. Next thing we'll have to do is try the Rodinal. Be a good mixer with vodka. So, kids, before I leave you, here with just a little tip, because you'll notice that even though I bought this new, it was all the way up to the top. I've done some experimenting, and as I take away some of the solution in here, which is a concentrate, and this does have a long shelf life, air in there oxidizes the concentrate, oxidizes the developer, takes away some of its strength. So what I do is to make sure the cap is off, and I give it just a little squeeze like this, and squeeze, because it's a plastic bottle, squeeze it to the, and this is good for your building strength in your hand, and you get it to the top, and then you put this guy back on, just like that. There we go. And now there's just a little less air in there, and it'll preserve it for a little longer, okay? Good. All right. So kids, and then here's my bottle, HC-110. Just give it a little squeeze like this, bring it up to the top. This guy's kind of thicker. You know what you can do is you can get somebody who's really strong to squeeze these bottles for you. There, look at that. That's nice. That'll last for a while.
So what happens when you've used up most of the solution? What do you do then?
That's a good question, Susie Public. My answer to that is once you've run out of strength in squeezing, you can actually buy aerosol air and and it has a little nozzle at the end, and you put this special air in it, and it's not like the air that we breathe, and that's acts like a little buffer. So, but then you have to spend money on canned stuff. That's all I know. Well, actually, there is another way, and that is you can get a bottle that has a wide enough mouth so that you can not only pour the developer in, but you can put little marbles in. Little glass marbles. Go to a toy store. So I mean, I have to think ahead. But then, as you start putting the marbles in, that displaces and pushes the air out. So that's wacky, but sure, why not? I think you'll be using it up before you get to that point. And it also makes a fine cocktail mix.